Well, it has been an exciting journey for me on my career. I can say that since graduate school, I really have been drawn to the people side of the business. I introduced myself as a business person who focuses or specializes in HR, but I am a business person first and foremost. And I think that's really important and maybe a distinction in the way I describe HR and the way some of my colleagues might. I have served as Chief Human Resource Officer for a number of organizations, both on a full-time and interim basis. I've worked in Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. I've worked in private equity and in startups. So I have the full range of market segments under my belt, which has enabled me to work with a whole different array of people, from manufacturing technicians to scientists and medical doctors. So I've been very, very fortunate and deliberate about seeking out those experiences. And the academic side of my career is one that I have really felt has been very important to the work I do. I am a practitioner academician, and I think that the two really strengthen what I am able to bring to the classroom. Well, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of my students that I have even this semester, and they think that HR is all about caring for people. And while that's one side of the coin, the other side, taking care of the business, is equally important, because if you don't take care of the business, you don't have a business to take care of people. So it really goes hand in hand. And, in my framing of HR, I think that those that are most successful in HR really understand and appreciate that you must attend to both sides, to both the business and the people who make the business work. You had asked me, Carla, about the myths and the realities, and I just think that that's such a great question, because it really holds the key to whether someone may really be interested in HR as a career. There is the myth that HR is just there for compliance. Mm-hmm. We also get a lot that we hear that, HR is just there to protect the business, or it's just there to protect the people, or that HR is the soft side of the business, or, and this one makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck, that HR is easy. So let me talk a little bit about the realities, because I think that the reality is what prospective HR candidates should think about. HR really serves as really three objectives. They enable the business, can't do the work without people. It supports employees and other stakeholders. And I believe that it's our job as HR professionals to ensure a safe and compliant workspace. So that compliant workspace is something that comes up, though that's not the sole objective that we had. I mentioned earlier that, jokingly, that there's, that HR is the soft side of the business. There's nothing soft about the work that we do. Some of the data points that I offer should highlight just the financial implication of the people side of the business. The Society for Human Resource Management did a study last year, and they showed that more than $250 billion was lost in the United States alone because of cultural mismatches, meaning that an employer and employee just really weren't meant for each other. And in my framing, there's not bad people, there's just bad matches. And that really gets to it. And it's very, very costly. Gartner said that 75% of companies with diverse and inclusive decision-making teams exceed their financial targets. So diversity, inclusion, belonging, all really gets to that. It's not a matter of doing the socially right thing, but it does aid and abet the business as well. And, we know that that companies that have diverse teams not only are financially more successful, but they are more creative and they sustain that creativity for a longer period. So you just look at the multi-billions of dollars associated with the key points I've just given you. There's nothing soft about that. If you don't pay attention to the business side of the business, you're really putting the business in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. You know, the reality is that done well, HR is tough. There's nothing easy about it. You hear a great deal. Employees' medical issues, their physical and financial woes, the employees' issues at home and how it's impacting them. And this has been particularly true in the pandemic. And the other side of the reality is that you may end up having to actually terminate good people for the betterment of the business. It's called layoffs, and we don't like them, but they happen. That's true. That's the myth and the reality. But let me speak a little bit about the skills and attitudes that I think that are necessary. And, I talk a lot about service skills and how you need attitudes and emotions, a respect for the community, personal accountability, and then teamwork. But the first and foremost is that HR needs to have a degree of courageousness. They need to come to the business ready to tell the truth, whether that's tell the truth to the individual, that they're not performing as planned, or they're not meeting expectations, or that they're just not a good fit. And likewise, being able to tell leadership that proposals that they're thinking about may not be right for the business. And so those are the sorts of things that are the essence. And that's why I say those skills are really very, very important when it comes to the work that we do. Now, smart boards of directors, shareholders, and other key stakeholders know that if HR isn't working, the business is not working. It's key. And with such vital work, you're right in the thick of things. So for me, as a business person specializing in HR, you can see why and how HR has really appealed to me. I'll sum up in 2 words. HR matters. It's just that simple. Well, the first thing is I'd ask yourself why you want to be in HR and make sure that you are looking at the territory realistically. It's not as soft as some people would suggest. It is tough business at times. There's lots to recommend it, but you need to make sure that you're ready and that you're frankly tough enough to do the job. You need to ask yourself what type of company appeals to you. And what I mean by that, what industry, what size of company, both in terms of employees and the amount of revenue, and the type of ownership. Is it a publicly held company? Is it a family-owned business? Is it privately held? Because all of those operate somewhat differently and have different really calls to order that you need to pay attention. What do you want to accomplish? Really, what do you want to do? Because if you really aren't interested in the essence of what people are and who they are and what they do, then look elsewhere. Where do you want to start? Recruiting, comp and benefits, payroll, HRIS, employee relations, training and development, strategy. There are all sorts of aspects of HR, even if you are the only HR person in the organization. And so making sure that you have a good grounding in all of those areas and making sure that you have some basis for business or managerial expertise that go along with those. But really deciding to be a generalist or a specialist, and that may help you decide where to start. Well, every decision you make impacts individuals. You're not talking about widgets or how many things you're going to produce in the factory that day, or how many sales calls you'll take or whatever. You're talking about humans. And that becomes a reality the first time that you have to make one of those decisions. People are tough and owners are tough, sometimes tougher. Conflict management is an element of the work all the time. And so if you're not comfortable with confronting difficult situations, this may not be the role for you. Change is a constant. If you're adverse to change, again, this may not be the right work for you to do. But I'll tell you, the most rewarding is that, I said, every decision you make impacts individuals, and that's challenging, but it's also rewarding because every decision you make likely impacts individuals, and that can be a really, really good thing. It also puts you in the driver's seat to enable the pursuit of excellence, both from, and that just is thrilling to see individuals and teams really accomplishing the impossible because you have either provided the right fodder, that right catalyst for them to persevere and to thrive, or it is providing training and development and making sure that we've got people in the right seat in the right bus. So for me, I think that that's the challenging, and taken on the positive side, that it really is the rewards that you can find as well. Well, first of all, it is a growing field. It is one that is going to be least impacted by automation. And so if you have an HR background, you have a good chance of becoming and staying employed. And I think that level of competitive positioning is really essential today. It is essential to the essence of the business. If the people aren't working, the business isn't working. So you're right there in the thick of things. It affords you daily impact. You get to see, feel, hear the impact that the work that you're doing has on others. And for me, that is very, very exciting. I care. And if you do too, then join the fun, because there's a lot of fun to be had. I will close by saying that HR is not for amateurs. It is a body of knowledge, regulations, with distinct cultural implications. And if you're going to commit, I ask that you do so wholeheartedly, because we need the best and the brightest in HR. And we've got a lot of work to do.